know, anybody needs to get some guidance or help, send them toward me. I'm not charge them. I'm just gonna help them.
Okay, great.
Good job, Ruth Bay.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, Rusbeh. Good to see you. And now I'd like to bring on John O'Keefe, who will introduce our speaker for the day.
Okay. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Hear me? Okay. I'm delighted to be introducing Frank McGinity today. I've known Frank for near 40 years now. While he was a resident of Pacific Palisades, he's no longer a resident there. He's a resident now of Santa Barbara. But while he was a resident of Pacific Palisades and he owned a home in Oxnard on the beach, we rented his home. And that's how I got to know Frank in that wonderful beach, Hollywood Beach in Oxnard. Now, my friendship with Frank became stronger when he asked me to be on his board, the board of the American Irish Historical Society, California branch. This branch was founded by Frank in Los Angeles in 1983, and its aim is to make the Irish chapter of American history better known, and it's done very well at that. Its national headquarters is in New York City on Fifth Avenue. In my mind, Frank McGinity is a Renaissance man. He's proficient in a wide range of fields. He is a CPA with clients in that area, and he has his office in Santa Barbara along with his home. He is a lecturer and a writer on the subject he is speaking about today, which are the dangers of leaving large estates to one's children. And he has had much experience on this subject and has done considerable research on it. You will find this a very illuminating talk. Additionally, Frank is a traveler, an expert on travel, and he's written and spoken extensively about that. 2 books in particular, both entitled Get Off Your Street. Incidentally, this is another topic for a Rotary talk for Frank McGinity in the future. I could go on and on about other fields Frank is proficient in, but this is enough of an introduction for my friend Frank McGinity. Frank McGinity. Frank, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, how do we get on the big screen?
There, I'll pause the share.
Can you get me on?
Nancy,
put on
you have to make him a co-host.
There you go.
Should I put share?
I see
Okay,
you, Frank.
just
You're on the big screen.
Can you see
Is
me
that
all right?
working?
Sure.
Yes.
Can you see me all right?
Yes.
Yes, I can, sure.
All right, well, thank you, John, for that introduction. I hope I can live up to that. And I'm glad to join you. This is a great venue. Only one thing missing, the free lunch.
That's right. No free lunch today.
This is actually the 3rd time that I've spoken to Rotary, because up in Santa Barbara, I had to give a talk on Irish history and also on St. Patrick's. But today's talk is more an avocation for me. It might be a talk to be given by a more professional, a psychologist, for example. But I have the chutzpah to say that following my advice could save lives. When I first got interested in the subject 20 years ago, I was speaking with an attorney who was trying a case in Santa Barbara. And he said, Frank, if only the family had taken the money out into the backyard and burned it, the family would be much better for that. And I understand where he was coming from. I've been working for more than 40 years as a CPA and advisor to wealthy families. It's been an exciting career, giving me the chance to meet and help so many individuals and families. However, during this journey, I have noticed a very disturbing trend. Significant wealth transferred to future generations has damaged the intended beneficiary, from my estimate, 75% of the time.
Wow.
And the larger the wealth transfer, the worse the results. Yet too few investment advisors raise this issue with their clients. According to the Institute for Preparing Heirs, 70% of wealth transfers fail. Up to 70% of second generation recipients will lose their inheritance. And up to 90% of third generation recipients will lose their inheritance. But this financial damage pales in comparison to the emotional and psychological damage that can also occur and that I've experienced. Unfortunately, I have experienced suicides, drug addiction, divorces, lawsuits, and many unhappy heirs. I'm precluded, of course, from telling stories about clients, except one client has given me permission. I handle his inheritance bank account, and it's getting very low. He has been in and out of rehab and has a felony conviction. He is a fourth generation from one of the wealthiest families in Los Angeles. And his mother's family owned a big manufacturing company in North Carolina. And she's not in good shape either, because as a child, she was driven around in chauffeur-driven cars, but today she's also running out of her inheritance. I've also read about many families in the press and talked with other CPAs with similar experiences. The causes of these failures are hard to generalize because each family is unique. However, I believe that one of the leading explanations for these tragic circumstances is that because of the wealth, the next generation of heirs is not required to develop basic character. Both the parents and the children don't properly educate themselves to be prepared to handle the wealth. In many cases, children were not pushed to work on their own and develop basic job skills at an early age. Many of these children do not develop appropriate interests, purpose, and careers. Many of us have relied on our careers for personal satisfaction and achievement. But inherited wealth too often replaces that opportunity, and the results are debilitating to all concerned. So for these reasons, I've developed, these are my opinion, of course, the following list of do's and don'ts for transferring wealth to the next generation. So let me put that on. Let's see if I'll put it to share. And we'll go up to, can you see that?
Oh,
I'm not seeing anything.
Oh,
I made you a co-host, so it should work. And I
Do you
set it up.
Which one?
Twice on right there.
Looks good.
Here.
Here?
Down here where the symbol
Here?
is. Twice.
Huh?
Click, yeah, click twice.
Here?
On the image,
Oh, share?
right here, just click twice.
Here?
One, and click again. And double click.
Yeah, I'm trying to get these to come on.
I think it's coming,
Oh, there we go.
it's coming
Do you
on,
see it?
Frank.
Yes.
It says don't, but doesn't say anything yet. It just says don'ts.
Oh, okay, that's all I want. Okay, let me start with my don'ts.
Okay.
Number one, I can't emphasize how important a job is for a kid in a wealthy family. So let me give you the. Oh, yeah. Let's see, I can't get the, okay. That's my first one. I can't emphasize how important a job is for a kid in a wealthy family. As most of us know, a job in our life is not only necessary, but it has been a source of satisfaction during our life. And it's only necessary because it's been a source of satisfaction during our lifetime. But too often, wealthy families might be too easy on kids getting a job at an early age. Also, I've experienced never buy a job or a business for a child unless a family business, of course. And I have seen this happen many times. Every time it's a failure. The kid doesn't have the experience for the job, and he has his parents buy the position. We just had, of course, a recent case that might even fall into this category, which was the big admission scandal. Okay, number two. Never transfer assets to the next generation unless they are properly prepared. Very often, children will hire poor financial and business advisors because they won't have the background to determine who is right for them. They will think that they have enough experience to handle the task, but they won't. This is why getting a solid education and the right advisors at the right time is critical. This is what I've seen a number of times. Avoid enabling, like the plague, particularly in wealthy families. Failure is a great teacher. Let it happen. The children will recover. Again, the case in the admission scandal is another good current example. Watch out for teenage and children in their 20s using withholding of love. Can you see me now?
Yeah.
Can you still see me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. Watch out for teenagers and children in their 20s using withholding of love approach to get their way.
Oh, my goodness.
Parents, this is one of the worst things that can happen to us. And the kids understand this. For the good of the child, parents must fight the urge to cave to these demands despite the pain it may cause. As parents, be fair and don't favor one child over another. I've seen a case in one of my wealthy families where the foundation was left to the three sons, and what happened was 3/8 went to one to make the decision, 3/8 to the other, and 1/4 to the third, and he never stopped complaining about that. So be fair. The resulting litigation doesn't help anyone, and don't interfere in a child's marriage. Let them figure it out like you did, particularly in wealthy families. You're dealing with prenups. Sometimes they can cause real problems. Okay, let's go to the do's. Start with a job, any job. Too many next generation kids are slow to get into the workforce. They often put off work in their teens and 20s because their future appears secure. Taking a first real job and starting a first career in the late 20s is hard. For many, they just never catch up to their peers. For many, flipping hamburgers, bagging groceries at an early age might not be a bad idea. Parents should insist that their children do well in school and start work promptly. Number two, develop a written job plan or career objectives. If it is not in writing, it won't be executed. Part of that plan must be to acquire financial and other skills to be able to accept and utilize inherited wealth in a responsible way. 3, minimize or quickly resolve family disputes. Many lawsuits costing millions could have been avoided with early and proper communication. In some cases, getting an independent family counselor involved might have helped resolve these disputes. In my opinion, which might not fit everybody, actively participate in sometimes religious or nonprofit communities. In many cases, families that give back and have some actual spiritual life are more successful at transferring assets from my experience. First, religious or nonprofit communities are more likely to help children gain character traits that lead to the responsibility use of wealth. Second, the peer group within those communities helps support those same traits. Utilize where possible character building institutions. I think in previous generations, and I think a lot will agree, where in our day we were going to be drafted into the military, so many of us went into ROTC programs. And in previous generations, I think the military or the Peace Corps was so helpful with wealthy families in developing character. Number 6, space out distributions of wealth. In order to ensure wealth is used responsibly, the family could decide to distribute 1/3 at the age of 30. I've seen this case. 1/3 at 35, and the remaining balance at 40. This can help those in their teens and 20s make them fewer financial and personal mistakes that may damage them in the long run. Some families have decided to distribute wealth only when the heirs have found and stayed with a job for a set period of time. They may pay their apartments, but they don't give them the wealth until they have a solid job. Number 7, use an outside trustee to handle the estate and distributions. If the choice is a good one, the trustee can help resolve family issues. And because of their independence, they may be much more likely to reduce rather than increase family turmoil. And maybe use a small gift strategy. Distribute to the kids through small gifts on a periodic basis and see how they handle their inheritance. This is also good way to coach your children. I have always said, if you are born into a wealthy family, and I can support this, you are born with a handicap. And people say, hey, what are you talking about? My kid is president of his class. It will still catch up with him, believe me. To be truly successful, a wealthy child will have to intentionally work harder in all aspects of their lives than their peers, because the money can be lethal. And history, with its many public and private stories of inherited wealth, has certainly proved how dangerous inherited wealth can be. So thank you for the opportunity to address you today.
Thank you, Frank. That was really worthwhile advice. Who has questions? Raise your hand so we can be sure to call on you. Dwight, I see both your hands in the air.
That's applause.
Oh. Yes,
No,
that too.
I have a question. I would think maybe half your audience could give me a story of where inherited wealth has hurt. I really think that, we all know of situations where too much money has been damaging,
Absolutely. Does anybody have a story they want to share? It doesn't have to be their family, your family. John?
Yeah, I was going to ask a question, but I have a story I could share of a very, very good friend of mine who inherited a lot of family wealth, and he's a very nice guy, and he would almost give you the shirt off his back, but the guy has never worked a day in his life, and he's not a very interesting person. In fact, he's very boring, and he's not happy at all. So I don't think this has helped him at all. And he's never really had, like I said, never had a job in his life.
Well, and we all know the story in a more positive, in the sense of more positive example of Warren Buffett, who long ago made it clear that he was leaving the majority of his wealth to charity.
That's correct. He gave each of his kids $1 million. That's like giving a couple of quarters to one of our kids. And he didn't leave them anything, $1 million each. That's nothing for a Warren Buffett heir,
I have a question.
He also set them up in business. Go ahead.
I have a question. What do you do if you have a dad who's generally very generous to begin with, but if you think he's overdoing it, and I know he has the money to be generous, but I think I'm afraid that maybe he's overdoing it to his own peril, but I don't think he is, but I'm just worried. How do I bring that up to him that you're being too generous with us at the moment? Can you really afford this? Can you really afford to be this generous? I don't want to insult him by thinking that maybe he's losing his mind, because he's not. He's a very high functioning, works 3 or 4 days a week, high level medical stuff. So he's still very sharp, but it just worries me that he's being so generous sometimes.
That's an honorable question.
Is Frank still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Is my picture on there or what?
I don't see it.
Where is the?
Your name is.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me get back on here. Yeah.
There you go. You're on now.
Now you're on, Frank.
Sorry, goodbye.
Yeah, I really think you watch kids and you see them develop, and they got a good job, and they do have character and that type of thing. You evaluate, their ability to accept gifts, and too often parents are doing favors for kids. But as I say, in so many cases, particularly where it's a lot of money, it's so damaging, you know, and seen so many cases of drug abuse and that type of stuff as well.
No, I guess my question is how can I approach him? I think he's being too generous at times, and that I just want to make sure that he is okay himself. I don't want to insult him.
Oh,
I
that
think
he's
okay.
That he has enough money for himself. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not, that really wouldn't be in my field, you know, I'm just observing the damages of the transfer, but how you handle those things, I wouldn't have particular expertise.
Okay.
Frank, while you're on that subject, another problem that I've observed with people who become wealthy through windfalls, whether usually it's an inheritance, they sold a business, or they won the lottery or whatever, and research has shown that the majority of windfall recipients are actually bankrupt within about 5 years on average. One of the things that I find people are ill prepared for is not only to manage the money, but they become besieged with requests for help from everyone they've ever met and people they haven't met, and they don't know how to handle that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they need some training from someone or an advisor.
Yes.
That can help them through that type of thing. Because, you know, there's all these cases of the lottery where, sure enough, it ruins a number of people's lives and their money's gone, and millions in a relatively short period of time, as you said.
Yes, absolutely.
Frank, I've got a two-part question. First of all, as you know, the lifetime exemption upon the parents deceased is what, $11 million or something like that?
11.5, yeah.
Yeah, 5. What's going to happen to that if Biden's elected? Do you think it'll actually be reduced as big, as significantly as it's going to be? Number two is, what do you think of once your children have grown a little bit? I mean, I'm talking about over 40 and things like that, about an early distribution of that exemption, because obviously it gets a stepped up basis and you can still do it. So what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, and I'm sure if Biden's elected, he's going to look for all ways to raise taxes. So this would be a, you know, I think there's a possibility for sure. And what was the second part of it? Yeah.
It's about if you make an early distribution of that exemption, you know, while you're still living, what do you think about that, as opposed to wait to you're deceased and the exemption kicks in at that point in time?
You're talking about lifetime gifts, right, Tom?
Lifetime, yeah.
Yeah, you can make the lifetime gifts. The only problem, what you're talking about, possibly, for example, a beach house or something like that, which has a low basis. So you basically don't want to give that away, because as you pass away, then you get these stepped up in basis. But where you don't have to worry about basis, I guess you can, assuming the kids can accept it and manage it right. Yeah, you give it away during your lifetime.
Now that substantially reduces the tax paid as well when you do that, if there's no problem with basis, as you said.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's right, sure. If you're above that 11 million.
Hi, this is Chris. I'd like to share a few comments. I'm a CPA. I'm also a junior psychologist. And over the more than 40 years that I've been practicing, the transfer of wealth is always a very emotional and difficult decision for all family members. And what I have found is that quite often the parents are really do not want to share their thoughts with the next generation. And so there's expectations that may or may not be met upon the transfer due to a death. And I'd welcome everybody else's thoughts, all the financial planners here. I'm sure Steve and others have thoughts on this. For me, I have recommended discussing the wealth transfer with all the children, so there's no surprises.
Yes.
And I have found that to be successful. And on one of my large clients, there were multiple families involved because there were 2 marriages. And, you know, so to avoid problems upon the first wife is no longer in the remaining in the marriage, obviously, and she had 2 children, and the second wife had 3 children and was very protective of those 3 children. You know, so there was an opportunity to do some planning and gift out some assets to the first family members, you know, and for release on all other assets, and they would get their inheritance early, and that worked out really well, and they signed off on it. And I've seen it with other family members. If you really sit down and listen and work out with everybody involved, sometimes good things happen. You know, it's very hard for every family to have 3 responsible children. And it's been my observations that there seems to be 1 out of every 3 that needs a little bit more additional help. And resentment can build from that. So I'm just throwing it out. What are everybody's thoughts on, you know, having these type of discussions while everybody is still alive?
Yeah, I think it's particularly needed when you're not making a perfect distribution. 3 kids each get a third.
Mm-hmm.
But there may be special cases where, you know, one child is taking care of the parents and deserve a bigger share and that type of thing. I think particularly in those cases, it should be discussed.
Yeah, and also, I mean, in those cases, you can set up a trust for the irresponsible sibling.
Yes. But I totally agree with you, Chris, about the value in holding family meetings. And I've done them a number of times for clients. And sometimes if they're open to it, we'll invite part of their support team, their accountant and their estate planning attorney and so on, so that the kids understand what it is the parents want to accomplish, and all the people who need to participate in allowing for orderly transfers are part of the process from the beginning. So I think it's a great idea. I see that, by the way, Curtis has his hand up. Sorry, Curtis. Go ahead.
Chris, I think you make a good point in this. You know our children, and that's exactly what we've done.
Yeah.
But I have another question for Frank or anybody who has an opinion on this based on their education and their work. As a result of the money that's being spent by the federal government to fight the COVID crisis and the economic fallout from it, there's going to be an enormous need for more tax revenue for the federal government.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering what your opinion is as to whether or not it's likely that the stepped up basis is going to be a casualty of that.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because you've read about it in the Wall Street Journal that they're going to go after that particular aspect, and the amount of tax that you get from that could be substantial. Yeah, I think that has a good possibility, you know, of being changed, in my opinion.
I agree.
My opinion about the increase in debt that we've incurred for this crisis is just going to add on to the debt of the U.S. and not get paid back much of that.
I have read a couple articles recently where whether it's true or false on some of the things you get via computer articles, but Biden's platform includes the elimination of capital gains. You'll be taxed immediately on your capital gains, and that he is projected to go back to the Obama 5 or 6 million, and anything over that would be taxed 50%. And people are forgetting that last year, both houses of California virtually passed a law that didn't get through the governor yet, but that would effectively lower the death tax California had until 1982. They want to reestablish it. And if you're living in California, and Kurt, thank God you're not, there's talk, or the proposed legislation's looking as if they want to start taxing estates at 3.5 million going back to 10, 15 years ago. And California would develop its own death tax, which, as I said, they had till 1982.
Oh.
I have read that the tax, the estate tax, if it was lowered again from 11.5 to 5 or whatever it might go to, that does not raise that much more money. The big money from the estate tax comes from the big estates, not from the measly 11.5 to 22 million estates. That's my feeling. What do you think, Frank?
Yeah, and I think, well, yeah, no, I don't have the statistics, John, but it would seem you're talking multiples. I mean, you're talking 1 million or so people that are in that a certain bracket in California versus just those a few of the ones that are in the billionaire category. So I think if they can get it across the board, they come out much better.
I have another question on a different matter. Frank, I don't know if you've had this issue, but I've done my share of volunteer fundraising and a little bit professional, but I've encountered this fairly often from people of means who are certainly able to make reasonably substantial gifts, will tell me that they're just going to leave it to their kids, all their estate. Is there any way you can, obviously you can cite your ideas here or statistics, but how can you handle that? It's been a problem for me.
To give money away versus their kids?
Yeah, in other words, I'll ask a fellow who's interested in a project that I am, and he said he'll just make a modest gift because he wants to leave most of his assets to his kids. And he could do considerably better, make a considerably better donation. But they want to leave it to their kids and leave them wealthy so they won't have to work.
Which is a mistake. Yeah. Yeah, well, I think
bad examples.
What? I'm not giving any examples, no.
Frank?
No, I'm just saying they're the bad examples. I'm sorry to interrupt, Frank.
No, but that's the natural instinct to give to your kids. And you very often, without pointing out, you got to be very careful if it's too much. And so another good approach is the gifts to nonprofits, that type of thing,
Frank,
and you have to sell that.
Frank, let me ask you a question, and then it leads into another question. Ed Gold here. What are we talking about when we talk about wealth? What do you consider a very wealthy family or parent or that sort of thing? And number two, if you have these children, does it make sense for the wealthy family parents to provide the children with their personal financial statement? I mean, how do the kids know how wealthy the parents are? So
that was a subject that came up before, that it's in most cases it would seem to be you sit down with the kids and review this type of thing, set a plan, discuss how the money is going to move to the next generation. I think it depends on the circumstances. In other words, if you have a difficult child who has a problem, you may not want to discuss it using your judgment.
What do you consider a lot of wealth? I mean, you're talking about a state worth 5 million, 10 million, 50 million. What is your target audience?
Well, I think you start with 5 million for sure, but depending on the child, I mean, that could be very damaging as well. You know, give them $1 million or $2 million if they haven't properly developed themselves, gotten a good job, and moving ahead on their own.
Let me
You
ask
don't
you,
want. Yeah, go ahead.
let me ask you one other question. What you're talking about estates worth 5 million, 10 million. What role does life insurance play? You can very easily, by finance life insurance and other schemes, increase the estate from 5 to 10 million or from 10 to 20 million dollars.
Yeah.
And then what happens? These kids could be made the beneficiary. The insurance could be put in a trust. There's no estate tax on it. But shouldn't a good part of any estate come from a very handsome or generous life insurance policy?
Oh yeah, of course. It's all part of the package, I would say. Of course, a lot of people use that insurance money to pay inheritance taxes. I mean, that's a great strategy to use. But it all comes in, it's all part of the mix.
I think we have a question waiting from Steve Scherer. Is that right, Steve? Are you there?
Yeah, I think this is a fascinating topic, and I know along with Chris Bradford and Ron Leister and Mike Newman and Chris Gaynor and several others that our careers have been focused on this issue, and I submit there are no easy answers here. And one of my favorite parts of the Bible that people get wrong, it's not money that's the root of all evil, it's the love of money that's the root of all evil.
Yes.
And so
Yes,
the relationship between people, parents, children, grandchildren, grandparents, the relationship between people, whenever it starts to be defined in terms of money, you start to see problems.
Yes.
And money is a part of that, but a lot of it has to do with the interpersonal relationships between all of the family members and the importance of values other than money in their lives. And so I think it's very possible to leave large amounts of money to children, provided the underlying values and relationships between all of the family members are good.
Yes.
And I guess that's the one thing, and I suppose, Chris, when you mentioned, and Nancy, I think you jumped in on this too, communication is good about the money itself, but maybe there are deeper values other than the money and how much it is and what I had to do to make that money how you better invest it into the future and all of that. Maybe there are other basic values that are important to develop in our children, our grandchildren, and anyone who might be receiving that money. And maybe that's an even more important chore or job or legacy that we.
Frank, I'm sorry if I apologize for interrupting you. I see that we're just about at 1:30, and I know that there's some people who will need to go. So please feel free to jump off. And if Frank, if you're willing to take a few more questions, that's up to you.
I just want to comment, one of my principal points from my observation, and as I say, this isn't particularly my field, but the children or grandchildren do not develop a career. And that's where the problem comes in. They know the money's there and they do not develop their own personal career and livelihood.
That's huge.
That's where the damage is severe at times. They're relying on someone else's money.
Yes.
And they lose the satisfaction of a job,
Mm-hmm. I agree. I saw Adele's hand a moment ago. Adele, are you still with us? Oh, there you are.
Yes, I'm still here. Yes, I was just observing the importance of instilling values in the second generation. One of them, and I think, Steve Scher mentioned all of them. Importantly also is that charitable side of leaving a heritage or a legacy behind. Money is important, that's important, but I think there is also another duty of looking at charities that have helped the family or helped the individuals around the time they're leaving the wealth to go forward. So I'm just bringing in the role of charities into it over and above the individuals that are inheriting.
Okay, good. I see, Celine, you had your hand up too.
I have a question. Frank, you were saying that it's not good to have your family as a trustee, but find somebody else. How would you be, what would you suggest? If it's not your family as a trustee.
Having an independent trustee versus a family trustee, yeah. Well, I think, if a person's qualified in the family, this certainly can be, could be qualified as well. Very often, if you use an institutional trustee, as you know, they're not flexible enough and they have difficulty dealing with the personalities in the family. So very often, it's a good idea to have the trustee is to be one of the kids. I mean, from what I've seen, I haven't seen that being, assuming they're qualified, that's a negative,
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time, Frank. Obviously, this is a topic that is of great importance to a lot of people. And we've had a wonderful turnout and great participation today. I wanted to let you know that we will be making a donation to the Westwood branch of the Los Angeles Public Library in recognition of your time and thoughts with us today. And again, we thank you very much.
All right. I enjoyed it.
And we absolutely enjoyed having you. And for our members and guests who are interested in coming back, we will meet next Thursday, July 30th, same time, same place. In the meantime, everybody please stay well and safe, and I'll look forward to seeing you all soon. Have a great week. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron and Elizabeth.
Hey, Adele, what are you holding up?
I'm holding up what Ron Jen gave me. Remember? In San Francisco.
Absolutely. Of course I remember.
Yeah.
Thank you
Of
for
course
it.
I remember.
Yeah.
Hey, Nancy, this is Chris. I think that this subject is so interesting. And you have so many stories from qualified people inside our Rotary Club. Perhaps that we should carry on this discourse more in the future.
I like it. Absolutely.
I've heard this talk several times now, and I learned something new every time, particularly this time with the questions and the comments. Thank you.
Great. It's a great suggestion. We'll talk with our programming guru about organizing that. So thank you,
Nancy?
everybody. Yes.
Okay. For the Board of Managers, are we going somewhere else or is it picking up here?
You know what? I have to look at the invitation. I sent out 2 separate invitations. So I personally am going to jump off and jump back on. And you can, do you have your invitation handy? If not, I'll resend it to you.
Yeah, if you could do that, that would help.
We'll
Thank
do.
you.
We'll do. I'll send it a couple of minutes.
Thanks.
Okay, everyone, have a great week.
Thank you,
Thank
Nancy.
you. Thank you for joining us, our friends from San Francisco.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Hi, guys. Hi, Ron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Y'all.
See you around.